Hey, everybody, it's Josh. So glad you're here. Uh, I wanted to just take a moment and thank you for taking part of your day and spending it with me as I celebrate the launch of applying AI. It is quite the day. Let me tell you, you know what they say about best laid plans? Well, my friends, the day that you are having a book launch, you really don't want the whole entire internet to go down, which essentially is what's happening today because of Cloudflare. And I had all these great things planned as far as giving you illustrations of what's happening with the book and things like that. So for instance, I had a awesome presentation in Gamma that I was going to show you to go over all the book chapters, and that's down. And I have oh, Canva's up. So at least I can go ahead and share with you some coolness over there as far as what you're going to see in the book website. So that's now happening. So I can go ahead and show you that in just a moment. But then ChatGPT is also down. So you know how they say AI is going to take over the world? Not if Cloudflare is running everything. So we're going to have to improvise, adapt, and overcome today. So with that, again, I want to again thank you for being here. Writing a book is a challenging endeavor, and I want to thank all my friends who helped me through this process. I can remember almost 10 years ago uh, talking about wanting to go in and create some type of book. I've written book chapters before, but never a whole book, and it is a process. And so the opportunity was presented in front of me to write a book about AI, and so many people were like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Great question. We're talking about a topic that is rapidly changing and evolving to where the power of AI is doubling every 7 months. Very intense period. But the common thread throughout this whole entire effort is you. It's very human, and how our profession as learning professionals is evolving and changing into a human machine performance analyst, which I'll get into in just a bit. And so with that, there are some constants that are in here. There are some bits of content that have evolved and changed since I wrote the book, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. But again, the idea was not so much to talk about the technology, but how it impacts you at various levels. Whether you're just getting started with AI or you're using AI and from an operations standpoint, trying to decide upon platforms and tools, or if you're an individual contributor and you just are trying to figure out how to prompt, right? It's all in the book. So once I had in my mind the idea of, okay, let's go ahead and try to tackle all these topics. How was I going to go in and organize that? Right? How was that going to show up? And so now I have to. This is a very analog type presentation. It's almost like I feel like it's story time, right? Because because of all these other things that are happening with Cloudflare. Who knows? Maybe the deck will come up in just a moment. But anyways, let's just go ahead and take a look at this just for a moment here. So there it is, right? That's every chapter. Those are all the topics. And you can see that I have strategies and tactics right there, right? So a little bit for everybody. And as I was going through and organizing the content, it it really became clear what that through line is as far as your relationship to that information. And not only that, but how you can be actionable with it. So throughout the whole entire book, I have all kinds of different exercises that you can go through and be very intentional with. And I'll just get to that in just a bit. Also, I'm going to continue to check and see if any of these other sites are coming up online via the Cloudflare issue that's propagating throughout the whole entire internet right now. So let me go in and first just take a moment, and I'm going to read off a few names because I mean, without these individuals, um, I really couldn't have done this. There's so many people in my life that, uh, both personally and professionally, that really made this happen. And um, I first want to thank uh, my friends and family, right? My wife Wendy, and everyone in my family who has supported me throughout this whole entire effort. It's just been, they know how much time and energy goes into this, and it is if you've never written a book before, let me tell you, it is intense. And the last 6 weeks of writing this book, I think probably took a few years off my life. I'm recovering, but it was intense. And then it's all my friends in the industry. You know, we're all simpatico, and we're all working through this together. And I was just out at DevLearn, and it was an amazing experience. So many great things were happening to my friends out there professionally, and I surround myself with people who are smarter than me at all times. And so I'm going to read off a few names here real quick, and then I'll get into it. Okay, so just um, hold on one second. I'll get it right into the book. So these are individuals who provided their time and did interviews for the book, and those interviews are going to show up in the book website, which, due to the Cloudflare issue and DNS things that are happening, is slightly delayed. So, so yeah, it's one of those days, right? But I do happen to have an example here that I want to bring up of one of those wonderful individuals who actually did the keynote at DevLearn. And let me go ahead and bring this up. Yes, so Yulia Barnikova was actually one of my first people that I interviewed for the book. And the way that the interviews are going to show up inside the book website is just like this. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it so you can actually see what's going on here. So, these interviews were long, and essentially what I'm attempting to do is go ahead and break down what are the biggest takeaways, like what are the gold nuggets. Now, unfortunately, due to constraints as far as the book size, not all those individuals made, or none of these interviews made the book, but they will be on the book website. So thanks going out to Yulia Barnikova at Accenture, Mark DeMario, Bob Mosier, John Manali, Ian Brown, my friends over in Ireland, Sarah Mercier, Tom Decker, Vince Hahn, Garima Gupta, Gigi, Megan Torrance, Mike Ruska, and Marcus Bernhardt. Those individuals really gave me a foundation to work from. And without their contributions to this effort, I don't think it could have happened, right? Because, there's so many different things that are happening with AI, and the ability to actually have these very intelligent individuals bounce ideas off of, to validate, really gave me the confidence to move forward. And each of them, and I was very intentional about who I interviewed, each of them contributed to the formation of each of the chapters, which was essential. Professionally, my friends, and just so many people that I want to mention here real quick: Steve Brand, Brandon Carson, Cami Bean, Chad Udell, Chris Adams, Cindy Huggett, Daniel Wallace, David Kelly, Debbie Richards, Jen Solberg, Carl Kopp, Pooja, Jay Singh, Guy Wallace, Hadia Nurin, Jane Bozar, JD Dillon, Jeff Batt, Jill Stanton. And by the way, Jeff just got Guildmaster. Congratulations, Jeff. Julie Dirksen. And Julie was one of those people that I talked to 10 years ago. I'm like, hey, how did you write your book? And she has been a constant source of support throughout this whole effort. Cassie Labore, Tom Stone, Kareem Pagano, Matt Pierce, Michelle Lentz, Maya Roldan, and Trish Ewell. One of many. And if I didn't mention your name, well, you know the relationship that we have, right? And I can't thank you enough, because there's so many other people that have supported me and that have got me to this point. I'm indebted to you. I truly am. As I woke up this morning, the book was #1 in all the categories on Amazon, and that's because of you. I mean, you went out, you purchased the book, you're here, you're live, and for those folks hanging out, again, I am eternally grateful for you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take down Yulia here for a second. I'm just going to double check and see if Gamma is up, and it is not. So I'm going to roll through this very analog, and I'm going to talk about each of the chapters as I go through the book. And again, check out, look what I did here. Look at this. Do you see my colored markers there? I had this book at DevLearn last week, and many of my peers were looking at that, and they're entirely geeked out. I think they wanted copies with those chapter tags in there because it matches the gradient. Yes, I am that geeky. I had to go on Amazon and I had to find enough colored tabs to match that. Oh my goodness. So anyways, it's gonna be a little bit easier for me to pop over to each chapter and talk about. Okay, so in chapter 1, what you need to know about AI. This is a foundation. So if you're just getting into artificial intelligence, I know some of you are, right? A little bit of the background, a little bit of how it works. That's essential. When you talk about going from AI literacy to AI fluency, just getting a foundation and understanding how the technology works, the difference between deterministic and results that are based upon probability, essential. It's so critical as you move forward, right? So we form that foundation in chapter 1. Now, for many of you that have been, at it and working with AI, it's just going to be just a little bit of a primer on the history and how we got here. So that is in there. But then also, I'll just kind of teeing the whole book up and where the rest of the information sits as far as on a macro level, how AI has evolved into generative AI and eventually getting into agents and that whole path moving forward. So I know that for some of you that you're using automations and you're using agents, and again, this just kind of puts a whole bow on it and gives you that solid foundation. All right. And then as we move into chapter 2, which later on today at 12 noon, I'm actually doing the whole entire chapter. This is the presentation that I gave at DevLearn, and it is the rise of the human machine performance analyst. So let me just take a few moments and talk about that. I wasn't trying to throw a new job description or role just for the sake of doing it, right? Because, I mean, in our industry, we've had all kinds of transformations. When I started back in the mid 90s, there were clear designations as far as roles, right? I was an art director. We had an instructional designer. We had a project manager. We had a developer. Now, some of you are extremely lucky and you do have team compositions that are like that. But for some of you, you got to do it all. And you might be called a learning architect, right? So we have had some names, descriptions of our job come up. And so now this is an evolution. In the age of AI, how do learning professionals show up? And what skills do they need moving forward? So let's just take a moment and break this down. human machine. So as we move forward, this is about collaboration with AI, and in some instances, artificial intelligence actually doing the task. 100%. It's going to happen, right? But there needs to be policy. There needs to be a human very much orchestrating what is happening, right? Even with massive risk mitigation, you can have all kinds of really crazy things like this occur to where half the internet is down, right? I mean, what's your plan B when ChatGPT goes down? What's your plan B when Gamma goes down? You can't do your presentation. You got to lean into your expertise, which is what I'm doing a little bit right now, right? And so, we're going to go ahead and we're going to manage this relationship, not just you, right? Because as a professional, as a learning professional, you have to go in and leverage generative AI, creating learning experiences, doing problem solving, applying it to performance consulting, learning needs analysis, and so on. But then it's also the people you support. You support the business, you support individuals working within the business. And what is their relationship with AI, right? So it's not just you, but it's also the people you support and their net performance, humans working with AI. So it became really clear. And again, I could have said human AI performance analyst, but the word machine came up. And so why machine? Well, my friends, there could also be robotics there, right? So robotics is in play, especially for frontline workers that are doing physical labor. And so human machine landed. Let's talk about the second part, performance analyst. Well, performance was easy. Slam dunk, right? That's what we do. And in this case, as I mentioned, net performance of humans working with machines. Not only that, but we're going to be working extremely close to the business, lockstep with the business. As data and as information comes in, we're going to be orchestrating learning experiences in the flow of work. And so the last word, analyst, sounds like a data job to me, right? It is. And so validating that in those inputs, where are you getting the sources of truth from the business in regards to the reality that's truly impacting performance? Is it a training issue? So yeah, you got to get your performance consulting hat on, my friends, for sure. And the learning experiences that we put out there to mitigate all of these performance issues are going to be orchestrated. I mean, yeah, okay. So are you going to go in and create courses? Still possible for larger efforts. But for many of these situations where you have to get almost like a comms learning experience out to the front lines because there's been a shift in reality and frontline sales need to show up different. There's a safety issue that needs to be addressed and so on. You're going to be turning the dials, right? You're going to be orchestrating experiences. But on the back end, did they work? Did you move the needle? And so you have to go in and look at all of those analytics to determine, well, maybe we're going to do it differently next time. And that's where the analyst part comes in. So the human machine performance analyst has very specific skills. And let me be clear, at the foundation is adult learning principles and learning science. Whether you do it yourself or an agent is checking to see if you are writing a learning objective properly or validating your learning needs analysis to see exactly how you're going to create or orchestrate those learning experiences, it is all based upon empirical evidence, not hearsay. And just yesterday, I was doing a Google search about writing learning objectives. I was just checking to see what Google was going to come back with. And sure enough, Google came back with learning styles, right? If you know, you know. And it just listed all like, auditory, kinesthetic, visual. I'm thinking, oh boy, if this is a source of truth, then for professionals who are just getting into this industry, they're going to have a very skewed look at the way, that reality sits or sets. So, yes, that is one of the major considerations is the empirical evidence that we have as far as how these learning experiences get orchestrated. Next, business acumen. My goodness, if we are working lockstep with a business, you better be able to talk the talk, right? And that is going to take a little bit of time. I almost think of like a mini MBA, to where when certain words or descriptions are talked about and concerns are brought up. Same thing with talent management and understanding what's happening with HR. Having that vocabulary and that understanding and the ability to communicate as far as impacts to the front line or impacts to the bottom line is essential. Data and analytics. I already mentioned it. So yeah, you're going to have to brush up on your data and analytics skills. Yeah, that's Megan Torrance has a great book out there on it, great math book, and that's one of those other skills that is required. And what about content creation? Yeah, that remains to be seen as far as how things are going to be automated in regards to the learning experiences that we create. So those are just some of the skill sets, some of the major skill sets that are going to shift and change and impact our role. Um, so it's going to take some time, right? And as we begin to see more capabilities come online within our environments in the way that we create content, or content is orchestrated, we are going to now work out on the edges of the learning journey. So performance consulting, the front end analysis, working lockstep with the business, and the analytics part on the back end to verify and make sure that whatever learning experiences we orchestrated, we can turn those dials, reconstitute it, and have it come out stronger the next time that there is some type of effort. All right, so that is chapter 2. Chapter 3 is the AI strategy for learning and development. And so essentially, this is the vision of how L&D shows up in the age of AI. And it's an evolution. Again, I do believe that we will become a human machine performance function, to where we could even assist in the orchestration of work. And you're probably like, well, why is that really our job? Should we be orchestrating work? Well, if it involves integrating learning experiences into work, yes. Right? So you're going to become extremely intimate with tools and platforms that your frontline workers are using, environments, channels of delivery, and how we can lockstep work with the business to put these learning experiences right in there. It just shows up very different. And a lot of this depends upon your organization's AI readiness. I mean, I can go on and talk about how L&D needs to show up in the age of AI, but if your organization does not have its AI operations in line and stood up, that's an issue. And so when I talk about from an organizational standpoint, the challenges that we see, a lot of it stems from a lot of indecision and not understanding what the go forward plan is with AI. And so you're down in the tactics, like you keep hitting ceilings every time you attempt to expand your capabilities, expand what you do from an AI standpoint. And so having AI stood up across the business tech stack, and I'm talking about Microsoft and Google, OpenAI Enterprise, essential, and working from there. And it's also the vision of your leaders. Having your leaders go from AI literacy to fluency, essential, because they are going to understand how to adjust the business in the age of AI. Also, understanding the importance of how AI shows up for their associates, for the people working for them. And um, other aspects, other things that are incredibly important when you have access to multiple models is change management, right? This is a radical shift in the way that work is done. And so a very mature change function is essential. HR, talent management. What is the line of succession? How do you handle new hires when you have a mature AI operations? What are you looking for? Especially when you have the degradation of skills because tasks are being taken on by machines. What is the line of sight from a new hire all the way to someone that has 10 or 20 years experience? Are they just jumping to do that task of a 10 or 20-year employee? Seems kind of bumpy, right? So, again, we have these dependent, but when they're in place, it's magical. I've worked with multiple firms on implementation of AI cross-function. And if you stand this up properly, there is definitely velocity within organizations. And I can see that velocity happening to L&D, to where you can create new learning experiences. I mean, is it rocky? Yeah, man, that ride's bumpy. There's no doubt about it. Because you're going to attempt to do things that you haven't done before from a learning experience standpoint, and it's not going to be easy. Bi-directional avatars that tap into an LLM, maybe even a custom LLM, and trying to get sources of truth, and it hallucinates. And yeah, I mean, but those are all engineering issues, and those will be solved for. So yeah, chapter 3 gets into that reality and what does it look like moving forward. Chapter 4, privacy, security, ethics, and governance. I gotta get into it, right? I mean, these are our current realities, and they evolve and change every single day. From new rulings on copyright issues to adjustments in models to where either bias is reduced or enhanced. I'm not going to mention certain models, but they function a certain way. The ethics around utilizing AI, for instance, tracking an associate's work, process mining. What are they doing in their environment? What are they doing in their computer? All for the sake of understanding process and work. Employee personas. Like how deep are we going to go to get a sense of that reality so that AI can be implemented properly? It's a sticky wicket right there from an ethical standpoint. Also, AI taking over someone's tasks that they love to do. Wow. Where does that individual sit? What is their line of sight moving forward within the organization? That's a huge issue. And then finally, governance. So whether it is your own internal AI policies, the policies of your state, the policies of your country, all that impacts the work that we do, and tracking and seeing where that goes. Chapter 5, business platforms and performance. That's where I'm at right now. And yes, I still don't have my Gamma. It's not up, so it's just going to be me talking here. And it is just up now. So with that, hold on one second. I actually now have something to show. Well, I might as well just run through it really quick and just kind of recap where I've been at this point. Again, it's kind of a wacky day, so I appreciate if you're still hanging with me, even on the recording, thank you so much. All right. So this is what was supposed to happen, right? Best laid plans. So again, I've already gone over the shift that's happening and all these new realities of AI kind of giving us a different lens on thinking about the way that we show up. And chapter 5 talks about business platforms, but even with the learning management system, rethinking, do we need to have our content inside boxes, right? When we put a core content inside of a course, that course sits inside of an LMS or LXP. Those are a lot of boxes in there. It's very difficult for the information to live and breathe, which is essential in the age of AI. Just some reinforcement as far as the new paradigm or shifts that are occurring. And again, I've mentioned these already. So from the business platform standpoint, again, chapter 5, strategy first, right? That platform, Microsoft Azure, Google Workplace or Google Vertex, that's what you're building your AI off of, or OpenAI's Enterprise, or even Anthropic's platform. That's how it cascades down, my friends. That's it. And that was essential that I put that in the book on chapter 5. And so we go through and we take a look at those relationships. And if you think about Microsoft and where AI now sits, whether it be inside of an individual tool like PowerPoint, where you can create a deck with Copilot. And by the way, there is a new Copilot creation mechanism that kind of feels a little bit like Gamma. So it's kind of interesting. Or taking up to Microsoft Teams, where after meetings, you have meeting notes and you have action items. That's all AI driven. Or being able to go ahead and leverage all of your documents across the Microsoft Graph to where you can work in Copilot and related documents are brought up during a prompt, right? That's all essential. And all of that impacts performance across your whole organization. So yes, that business stack shows up. It's how models show up. It's how your organization, your individuals show up to do the work that they do each and every single day. And so once we have that set, once we have that reality set, we then can go ahead and get a little granular and take a look at other elements that are extremely important part of that, including knowledge management. Knowledge management is critical. Like I mentioned, Microsoft Graph, to where you're able to go ahead and have sources of truth that are structured. And I know there's companies that are working on shoring up unstructured content. I get it. So if you have a single source publishing system, you're rocking and rolling. If you have a knowledge management system where your metadata tags are identified, you're looking pretty good. Why? Because you have to have these sources of truth. AI is great at reconstituting data into formats that are actionable. If you don't have these sources of truth and you can't get to them, you can't validate them, then the work is going to be incredibly difficult. Okay, so knowledge management is mentioned. Knowledge graphs are also mentioned in the book. Yeah, I geeked out big time. I also get into human capital management systems, and we see collision happening in the marketplace where Workday buys Sana. And so we have all of this data floating out there that we need to parse through and work with. So human capital management systems are mentioned in here. I also get into AI-enabled learning platforms, chapter 6, right there. And what does it mean when you have your LMS or LXP plus AI, right? And I get into it and talking about those evolutions that are happening out there, ways that you can go ahead and bridge data across those systems and the way that they're becoming adaptive. I think one of the I do have a miss in here. I mean, again, I started writing this book a year ago, so what does that mean? And but I think in this chapter where I talk about learning systems, that I could have spent a little bit more time on not using a learning system, right? The ability for your content to live and breathe where it needs to be, and it's still trackable, and friction is removed. I use that term a lot, friction. So if you have the content in the flow of work or learning experience, it's consumed, it's acted upon, and you have the data to understand, was it effective? Did you move the needle? All without a learning management system or LXP. So again, a little bit of a miss for me. I just got to call it out. It is what it is. But if you do happen to have an LMS or LXP and you got to live with it for a while, that chapter is for you. Chapter 7, we get into, and now I have my deck here. So let me just flip through it and get right to it. Actually, all these I'm going to get into. Oh, here's the overview of the whole book right here. So I'm going to flip through this because again, I got my access to Gamma halfway through this presentation. I only have about 20 minutes to go through the rest of this. But if we have the business platform, knowledge management, human capital management, people and analytics skills, those are also mentioned there in chapter 6. Essential. But going back to the ethics discussion, what does that mean? Like, what are we tracking there? How much information are we getting from our associates that will guide us towards learning paths, upskilling, reskilling in real time? How much is too much as far as data gathering? And then there's that learning platform. And then we get into content platforms and content development. One thing I want to mention here, and this is mentioned in the book, is the concept of headless AI functions, meaning that tools that you have worked with in the past, that maybe you've been on a timeline with, or you created slides with, those tools eventually will evolve so that agents can go ahead and spin up experiences independent of you. You may come in and take a quick review or look at it, and that's going to be about it. We're not there yet. So that's the reason why, I have here tools and content engines. Content engines. So we talk about hyper-personalization and the propagation of learning experiences out into the flow of work at the speed of business. That's how it has to happen. And that is all inside of chapter 7. Again, various ways that can go down and get a little technical as far as the communication protocols that need to happen, like MCP, like MCP server or A2A. So yeah, we geek out a little bit there. And also the AI content generation process. I got a few diagrams in there. Again, I have to do a little analog here, but you can see there, right? Got our agents helping out with content creation. Content adaptation. One of the other terms that's been coming up, gets me excited, is self-healing content. That's right. Based upon the data that's coming from the front lines, that's vetted out, your learning experiences can automatically heal. And I'm telling you, from being in this business for 30 years, man, I wish I would have had that in the 90s. on some of those system trainings. And actually, if you're still doing system training these days, you know what I'm talking about, right? Every time the developers change the interface, that would automatically propagate throughout the training. Oh, that would be wonderful. I'd pay money for that. In addition, in the content creation section, get into avatars. So I have a whole section in here on avatars, and yeah, there's me speaking Arabic, right? So what does it mean to have an avatar and the integrity, right? Integrity is another big word that we're going to be talking about for years to come. When we have representations of humans, is it truly effective? How long should they be up on the screen? When does it break? When does that emotional connection break and you lose the attention of the viewer? Really critical. I love the technology. I think there's a massive upside with it, with video-based avatars. I think we're going to be in a space, though, where audio-based avatars in real time, bi-directional, emotional, are going to have a little bit of area there to work with, while the video-based avatars increase in quality. So a lot of fun there with chapter 7. And then we finally get into the tactics. You're like, my gosh, man, when do we get into prompting? Well, chapter 8, we finally get into prompts there in chapter 8. But the diagram that I use in the book and here is bottom up, right? It's very tactical. And so I get all into free-form prompts, structured prompt, and there's tons of exercises and resources up on the website. Just to kind of give you a little sneak peek here, again, the book website is not up yet. So again, I appreciate your patience as we work through that. But I wanted to go ahead and show you some of the additional resources that are in here. It's phenomenal. So for instance, just in chapter 1, as this opens up, yeah, it's Canva's still a mess here. But you can see that there's some checklists and some additional items within every chapter. So it's just not that you are going to be reading this book and then trying to be actionable. There are going to be tools and there are going to be resources for you up on the book website that you can take full advantage of. So especially with the prompting chapter. And all the illustrations, they're all broken out from each chapter. So if you want to take this information and share it with your coworkers, put it in a presentation, it's all ready to go. And it's there for you. So why is that? Why would I go ahead and make these available? Because it's going to take all of us to move this industry forward, right? And if you have certain conversations, because everybody's on a different journey, whether it be yourself personally or your department, you now have access to these great resources. And I just want to mention one more amazing resource before I get back into talking about prompting, is the book club. Let's get into that for a moment. So yes, if you want to stand up a book club internal to your organization, or I mean, if you just have a book club, there's guides in here for each and every. You could do a chapter a week, and we have chapter overviews and key ideas and takeaways. We have summaries of the illustrations. We have worksheets and all of that ready to go. It is absolutely phenomenal. And did I have to do all of this? No, I didn't. I could have just put the book out as is, but that just didn't make sense. So all of these additional wonderful resources that are in here. Getting back to chapter 8 prompt. This is kind of fascinating and thinking about how the evolution of prompts is happening. Some people work very organic. My lens on it is that it must be precise. That's just my take on it. And so when you are trying to do deep work, when you're trying to orchestrate the format of a performance consulting report or action mapping or storyboard, and it's got to be in a very specific actionable format, there's no room for ambiguity at all. None. So, again, if you go through this, you're going to learn about the Tracy prompt, the Tracy format, task, role, audience, create, and intent. And if you continue working with that book website, I'll be adding additional concepts in there as prompting evolves. Like a big evolution that's happening in prompting right now is a QA section, quality assurance. Yeah, you can have your prompt, or you can have the model check itself. It's fantastic. And so as the technology evolves, as models evolve, as prompt design or prompt engineering evolves, those updates will be on the book website. But great foundation there in chapter 8. So if you are still trying to get your prompting up and trying to get these actionable outputs, that's for you. Chapter 9 gets into AI learning workflows and automation. So, this part right in here, to where you have multiple prompts working in succession, called prompt chaining, prompt sequencing. Those are workflows. If those are working great, then you'll mature it into an automation. If you have access to Power Automate, if you have access to N8N, Make.com, Zapier, platforms like that, you'll be creating automations internal to your organization. These are very low risk operations that are triggered by an event that produce a valuable output. All right. And so chapter 9 gets into the process of that evolution of a prompt into being part of an automation. I also get into creating a prompt library. So prompt library is a huge part. And what does that look like within your learning function? These are not static libraries. They evolve, they change with models and how work is done is defined within these prompts. And so setting up a cadence and thinking agile as you're setting these up is essential, right? Whether you are meeting monthly or quarterly on your prompt library and identifying key prompts that are doing deep work that all your associates can take advantage of, man, that is amazing, right? That takes a culture change, though. It's a different way of thinking because, with this technology, again, it is doubling in capability every 7 months. AI is doubling every 7 months. It's insane. So we're going to have to think a little bit different about how these advancements show up within the tech stack and how they propagate out throughout the learning function. And one of those little topics that you'll meet on is your prompt library. So I talk about how to set it up, metadata that goes in the prompt library, and all the other things that you need to think about to properly pick a platform, set up your metadata, store your prompts, update your prompts, retire prompts. It's all in here. I also get into like a prompt. There's what a prompt workflow looks like right there. That's all in there. Chapter 10, autonomous agents. I had to put it in there. So you can see here that we have in chapter 10, autonomous agents. I show it right here. And this is probably one of the more fascinating chapters just because it's maturing and it's extremely new. It's brittle. And some organizations have them teed up. I totally get it. Some of you are working with platforms that have agents already in there doing deep work. Fantastic. But for many of you, you're still unsure. What is an agent? Why should I care? And how is it going to impact me and the people that I support? All that's inside of chapter 10. I get in and describe what's the difference between a GPT, a gem, a Copilot agent, and a true agent. And if you want to cut to the chase, it's really about memory, short-term and long-term memory, because access to sources of truth, to models, to tools, yeah, we have that already, right? It's the memory part that's really the difference. The ability to actually go ahead and store information and have it acted upon based upon other agents or other rubrics or decision-making processes. That's an agent. And I get fully into it there in chapter 10 so that you have a baseline understanding so that you, when you're in a meeting talking about agents, you know what the heck is going on. And even enough here to where you could go ahead and build out your own agent if you have access to the platforms that allow you to create it. And so that is chapter 10. Get into full planning of your agent, design of it, accessibility, accessing data infrastructures. That's all in there. I also get into, one of the other, I guess, through lines of the book is this little diagram right here, which shows the relationship between humans and machines. So this is the human AI task scale, and I don't believe I have it. I don't believe I have it in this deck here. So let me just. I don't think so. No, but I'm gonna bring this up because it's related. So as you're taking a look at this diagram, just keep in mind that our relationship with machines evolves and changes, in so much that whether you are prompting, creating an automation, you're doing collaboration, you're working with an agent, you're running policy on an agent, that all evolves and changes. Because today, I had this issue with just accessing ChatGPT. Okay, now it's up. And so all the prompt demonstrations and stuff I'm gonna have to table. But it was down earlier. What if those APIs, what if you're running agents that are based upon OpenAI's models and Cloudflare jacks everything up? What do you do then? Well, everything shifts back down to human. Everything shifts back down to human. But let's say, just for a moment, that everything is working, meaning that internal to your organization, the risk has been mitigated, you have access to data, you have access to systems to build agents, and you have all the proper support to pilot, pressure test, and to get them out the door. Well, let's throw a scenario out there. So let's say that there's a tariff and frontline sales has to show up different on a Monday morning because they can't get access to product A. They have to sell product B. If we have the ability to tap into current state information about the products, you can see here I have a CRM agent here, real-time sales data. I have specific information about the individual from a persona standpoint. This comes in the form of coaching data. I also have information about how the individual likes to consume information, for instance, like a podcast. If I have all that information, and if I understand what the gap is, the performance gap, I then can go in and orchestrate an experience for that frontline salesperson, hyper personalized, even understanding the customer, and staging it. So there's scaffolding, there is testing of knowledge, eventually where the salesperson within a half hour can confidently walk in and engage a customer about a new product. And so how does this happen? Well, if you look over on the right-hand side, on the way over to the customer site, they're listening to a podcast about the new product. And we can get all kinds of data from that, right? I can get, did they complete it? Net promoter score, cognitive load rating, like, is the media itself effective, things like that. Very much level 1. They then are going to go ahead and get a quick quiz or just a quick validation that they understand the information that was in that podcast. Then they get their bidirectional avatar, all with information about the customer and what their specific needs are, their pain points. And so now we're going to go through 3-4 different scenarios, spin it up real quick, right there in the parking lot, right on their phone, and they can practice real quick until they feel confident. They think they got it. They understand the product. They understand the pain points of the customer. Level 3, change in behavior. And then, okay, well, end of the week, how did we do with product B? Right? Did sales increase? What was our effort? And so tapping into the sales data, we're able to now go ahead and get that sales analytics information. And then how much does all this effort cost? All the systems, the downtime of the sales associate while they're trained and so on, is going to give us our ROI results. Now, a little nod to Jack Phillips and Patty Phillips. You can't set this up unless you have access to data. Yet another thread throughout the whole entire book, data. It's critical, right? But if you have the ability to go ahead and work with your peers across function and IT, HR, and get this essential data, you will be able to orchestrate and build experiences like this. Today, this is a reality. You can do all of this today. It's just the issue is the maturation of AI and operations and the ability to go ahead and connect to data. That's the issue. It's going to happen though. So heads up, it will most definitely happen. So that is agents. And I'm going to go back to my little diagram here. And then I have one last chapter, chapter 11, that gets into conversational AI. That's a big one. So chatbots and everything from a text-based chatbot to an audio-based chatbot to a bidirectional video-based chatbot. Those concepts are all covered in here. And, it gets into like interactive stories and a lot of really fun implementations in here in chatbots. And Vince Hahn, gave the interview for this, and I can't thank him enough. And there's even there's a really cool, and the prompt is actually going to be up on the website. This fantasy role-playing game in here that you can try. And if you remember the text-based games from the way back in the 80s and early 90s, it's very similar. But it kind of, what the reason I have it in there is the foundation of actually a text-based chatbot. So that is all in there in chapter 11. And then we kind of put a bow on it at the end, and that is the whole entire experience. So again, for those of you that are watching this replay, I can't thank you enough because you actually just plowed through an experience where I had to do it extremely off the cuff. I didn't have access to my deck. I didn't have access to ChatGPT, and I did it in the most human, most analog way possible. So again, without you, this book would not have happened. So again, thank you so much. I do appreciate you and appreciate you taking the time to get this overview of applying AI. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at josh@joshcavalier.com. And with that, I wish you all the best on your AI journey, and I will see you down the road. Take care, my friends.